This is going to come a couple of weeks too late. I did plan on doing this sometime in January, but as we're only a couple of weeks out from it, I thought I'd do it now. This is the Retro Bear welcoming you once again, and we're going to do something different from the gaming side of things because we're going to talk wrestling again. Now, first of all, I'll thank everybody who watched the last video I did back in January, which are just basically a few memories talking about how this year will be. Well, the end of last year was sort of 35 years since I started watching American wrestling, and I thought, well, I'll do another one of these. It seemed to go quite well. I think somebody posted a video somewhere and I got a few new viewers, which was lovely. And I wanted to do this perhaps before the 1st of February, but yeah, I never got around to doing it, so I'll do it now. And I'll kind of include a little bit because I want to talk about my Royal Rumble memories, because that happened on the 1st of February. Unusually, it's usually in January. But also because I actually managed to watch some of this year's event. Now, that's unusual for me because I don't touch modern wrestling with a barge pole or indeed any other inanimate object. But because it started at 11 o'clock our time in the UK, usually these things start at 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, so by that point I'm fast asleep. And miracle of miracles, I was awake at 11 o'clock on Saturday night when it was on. So, as I do, I tend to try and find out some way of watching it. And found some I could watch. Oh, great. And I think I missed about the first 10 minutes. And it was the women's Rumble. This was the only thing I watched in Sunday. I watched this and then I went to bed. I didn't watch the rest of the show. I did what I used to do, which is read up about it. I'll give you a summary of that at the end. And this isn't good. You know, I just want to give a brief sort of my opinion of what I saw, and I don't want this to be any way people think I'm knocking women's wrestling, because I'm not, because I was always a big advocate of it back in when I was watching it in the Attitude Era. In fact, I grew up probably through 3 different periods of women's wrestling. Caught the tail end of the 80s stuff, at which point they pretty much retired the title when I started watching. Watching those early events such as the 88 Royal Rumble itself, which I'll mention in a second. And the 87 Survivor Series, where there was actually a women's Survivor match on there. Yes, so it's not, you know, then there was the revival in the mid-90s when Alundra Blaze was the new women's champion, and she had those matches with Bull Nakano and other things like that. Caught the sort of arrived in the middle of that. And then there was the Attitude Era women's wrestling as well. So yes, I've been through various stages of it, and so I don't want it to be sort of, if I'm critiquing it, saying it's not very good. Overall, it was okay. I wouldn't say I'd rush back and rewatch it over and over again. Look, a few things that sort of annoyed me about it was, first of all, the size of the venue. I appreciate it's the Lucas Oil Fields Stadium, which is used by the Indianapolis Colts for American football, but that run to the ring was huge. Absolutely massive, and in some cases, in certainly case of Charlotte Flair anyway, it took her the near 2 minutes to get to the ring that she had. I'm pretty sure, I didn't time it myself, but I'd like to have timed it. The time it took her when she was entered to the time the next person came along was a lot longer than 2 minutes. Because I was talking to wrestling fans, Big Game Al and the Northerner on WhatsApp at the time. And I was saying, by the time she gets to the ring, somebody else is going to have passed, the next person is going to be introduced and passed her before she's even got there. It was a massive long run. And you either had to run or make your way down at a reasonable pace. So, yeah. And I suppose it's because of the style of match. If you're going to put people in there and you're going to run this match for a minimum of 60 minutes, and you're going to keep people in there who entered really early, they're not going to be able to go the full 60 minutes. And I think back when I first started watching the Royal Rumble, it sort of crosses over with my memories of it, is they were very clever and very, very good at looking as if they were doing something but doing very little. So they sort of grabbed somebody in a hole in the corner and that would be it. But there seemed to be an awful lot of people lying around doing nothing. So it's going to be a few minutes of spots, and then they'd lie down for 10 minutes, and then they get back up, do a few more spots, and then lie down for 10 minutes. So there's a lot of people lying around, not seem to be doing a great deal. But yeah, I mean, we always tend to focus on the negative. There were a couple of negative things in there. There's a wrestler called B-Fab, who I know nothing about, who seemed to throw the worst kicks ever. I said this at the time. I said that those are the lightest looking kicks I've ever seen in my entire life. Some of the eliminations were very strange. That one towards the end, I won't spoil it if anybody hasn't seen it, but there was an elimination towards the end which was a good idea of doing it, but was really badly executed. The only thing I can really sort of point to which was exciting and sort of actually raised the level, I think it was Jordan Grice, I think it was, who's just come from TNA. She picked up Piper Niven, who was you know, not being what's the word? I'm not being degrading here by saying she's a big girl, but she's a big girl. And she actually picked her up on the shoulders, and the entire place went crazy. It was a really good moment, but there were very, very few of those at all, if many, during the run of it. The ending and the winner was pretty much predetermined. I think you could have done it. I think if you know, the exciting thing you can bring people to provide at number 13, bringing out Nikki Bella, yeah, you got problems. I think you're running out of people to get. But there were some good moments in there, and like I said, I didn't hate it. You know, I don't think usually these things put together by road agents, and I think they really got the pacing this match horribly wrong at times. It wasn't good, and you know, Mrs. Bear watches wrestling with me. The Royal Rumble is probably her least favourite style of match, and I've got to be honest with you. After watching this, I was like, this is yeah, it's a bit of a chore. I'm not going to say it's any better back when I first started watching it, but it was done differently then, which I'll talk about in a second. So yeah, it wasn't bad. Like I said, I did watch the rest of the event. I did read about it. The winner of the men's rumble, I don't know. I didn't sort of inspire me a great deal, although I know why the winner was the winner. At the moment, that particular wrestler is incredibly over with the crowd, very, very popular, and they don't usually get behind people like that. It's who they want to push rather than who is very popular at the moment. So I can see why it was done, but the match at WrestleMania last year was not good in the singles match he was in, and also I wasn't overly keen on the Saturday night's main event match from a couple of weeks ago, which potentially is going to main event one of the nights of WrestleMania coming up. Yeah, a lot is going to have to happen and change between now and then for that match to be any better than that, really. But you know, on the whole, I can see why they did what they did, and on the whole, I didn't hate the women's rumble. I just didn't really enjoy it massively. I think when the biggest pop of the night comes for somebody who has got a very strange online following, Alexa Bliss, for example. She's the girl who came back. She's been on maternity leave, I believe, or had a child and come back, and she was a surprise entrant. No one expected to see her in. But she has a very strange following, I think is the best way to describe it, people who follow her online. Obsessive, a bit like over her. It's a bit creepy. But yeah, she got the biggest reaction of the night, which, considering she didn't really do anything when she got in the ring or didn't last particularly long, yeah, I'm not entirely sure that was well just, but it looks like she's sticking around for a bit anyway. But yeah, anyway, that's it. So going back to my memories of the Rumble itself, I mean, the event started in 1988, which was actually a made-for television special. They put it on cable in America. Purely to get at the NWA, who on the same night were running a pay-per-view event. They were sneaky back then. You know, we had the '87 Survivor Series and Starrcade '87 at the end of the previous year, and the WWF basically said to all the cable companies, "You either run my event, and if you do, that means you can't run another wrestling event 60 days before or 60 days after," knowing full well that Starrcade would fall in the 60 days after period, or you don't carry on my event at all. And a lot of them felt bullied into that, so they all carried Survivor Series, very few of them carried Starrcade, and that's what it was. So come 88, Vince, yes, him, he who shall not be named, puts the Royal Rumble, or the Rumble Royale, on cable television, not say free to air, but you still got to pay for cable. but technically speaking, it's on television rather than behind a paywall. The NWA run something called the Bunkhouse Stampede, which is a southern version of a battle royal, does so badly drawing pay-per-view numbers, etc. And then by the time we get to WrestleMania in '88, WrestleMania 4, the WWF are charging you full whack for pay-per-view, and the NWA get their own back by putting Clash of the Champions on TBS, which I think is also a cable station. Somebody might have to correct me on that. And they get big numbers, and WrestleMania 4 is a bust, not just from a pay-per-view point, but from an actual event point as well. It's a complete disaster, horrible event. Anyway, that's a bit of background to that. So the Rumble wasn't actually released on video over here at all, so anybody who'd be able to watch it has been through the network. It's got the Hogan Andre contract signing for the live main event special, which came the week after, I think it was, which drew something like 30 odd million viewers in America on free television on NBC, primetime special. If you are on YouTube and you like to watch old style wrestling, I would thoroughly recommend watching the WWE Vault. They upload 2 or 3 matches a day, or 2 or 3 things a day to there, which is not old school. There's stuff on there from fairly recent. They upload a load of Royal Rumble stuff for January, and they just put the Hogan Andre NBC special match on there as well. If you've never seen that, with the twin referee angle, well worth checking out. I can do that because it's 37 years old, so there's no spoilers on that one, by the way. Can talk about the Royal Rumble from 2 weeks ago. Potentially people may not have seen it yet, but I'm not going to hold back who won the match in 1988. No, I'm not going to do that. And the Rumble itself was only 20 men back then, mostly mid-carders. None of the top-tier talent in Hogan, Savage, Andre, DiBiase, they weren't involved in it at all. Mostly sort of mid-card talent. You've got Rick Rude fighting Ricky Steamboat on the undercard. You've got the Jumping Bomb Angels, who were the women's tag team champions. If you've never seen a Jumping Bomb Angels match, watch this one. It's really, really good. Really, I think it's a 2 out of 3 falls match against the Glamour Girls. It's been a while since I watched it, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. So the event was popular enough that they actually introduced it as part of the pay-per-view. I think it was the final, the original Big Four. You had Survivor Series, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Royal Rumble. It was the final one of those 4 to actually go on a pay-per-view event on its own, and that was in 1989. Now that was that became a 30-man over the top battle royal. Interesting way of starting. You started out with 2 members of Demolition in the ring at the same time. You had the whole story behind the $1 Million Man buying his number. You had the confrontation between, another confrontation between Hogan and Savage, which then leads up to the next 1989 NBC special, live special, the breakup of the Mega Powers leading to WrestleMania 5. On the undercard, you had there was 2 out of 3 falls. They called it International Rules 2 out of 3 falls, or an international tag match 2 out of 3 falls. It's Hart Foundation and Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Fabulous Rougeaus and Dino Bravo. There was a women's title match on that card, wasn't there? I think there was. And the pose down between the Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude. Jesse Ventura is fantastic because Rick Rude's obviously posing properly and the Ultimate Warrior just isn't, and he's going on and on about this. And then probably the best thing on the whole, apart from the Rumble itself, which is a pretty good match, the best match on the undercard is actually Harley Race against King Haku. And it's one of these matches which we wrestling fans refer to as being stiff. Because they really are sort of slapping the crap out of each other. And you know that because you can hear the commentators, Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse Ventura on commentary. And you can hear what they say, listen to that, and you know these 2 guys are hitting each other. And again, if you've ever read Ric Flair's book, he says, the 5 people he wanted to fight with him, one of them was Haku and the other one's Harley Race. So you know these guys are going for it. Fast forward to 1990, this was the very first one I ever saw. I got it again from my mate at school. This was after the Survivor Series debacle. Go back and watch that video if you know what I'm talking about. So I got this, and I think I got the same time. I got SummerSlam 89 and Rumble 90 off him, and I think there was an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event tucked away on one of these tapes as well. So great treasure trove of stuff used to come through, and yeah, this was just great. It started off with the Rougeaus and the Bushwhackers. Look, if Michelle McCall is going to the Hall of Fame, stop complaining about the Bushwhackers, all right? Please, stop complaining about the Bushwhackers. You got Brutus Beefcake against the Genius. Yeah, okay. Then you've got, again, another stiff match. This is stiffer than the one from the year before. Rugged Ronnie Garvin, Greg the Hammer Valentine, literally slapping the tar out of each other for 17 minutes. And they are. If you've ever watched those guys wrestle, you know one of the things that they do is chop and chest slap and things like that. And they are just knocking 7 shades of cack out of each other. It's for a match that style back then in the WWF was rare. Very rare indeed. And this has been the feud which has been going on since the previous summer. So I brought that to an end finally. But that was really good. And then you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Big Bossman. Again, 2 big guys, again, knocking 7 shades of hell out of each other. Then you got the Royal Rumble itself. And the great thing about the Royal Rumble is it sort of brings feuds together and creates new ones. So here you had early confrontation between Jake the Snake and the $1 Million Man, who were feuding for the previous year, and would go to WrestleMania and have a match there. You had Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage, who were just beginning their program together. You had Roddy Piper and Bad News Brown starting their program, which led to the WrestleMania 6 match. You've also got a confrontation between the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan on the way to WrestleMania, in the middle of it. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. It's always worth watching those things and just how these things either progress or finish or carry on or what have you. Hogan wins the Rumble, which at the time probably was the right decision because he's still on top, although the passing of the torch is coming. Would it have made sense for the Warrior to win it? You could argue the toss on that one. But again, I think they probably weren't quite sure about the Warrior, which is why they wanted to get the belt off him 12 months after he won it. Fast forward to 1991, we've got another Royal Rumble, slightly changing the format. So you had a really good tag match start between the Rockers and the Orient Express. Fantastic opening, one of the best openers for pay-per-view you could find. It's high-octane action. Whatever you think about the Orient Express, which is basically, you know, a couple of lower-tier guys together as a Japanese tag team, even though they weren't Japanese. It's a really good match. You know, 2 guys, you know, 4 guys really working very well together. It's good. You also had the first ever title match in the Royal Rumble card, the Ultimate Warrior against Sergeant Slaughter, and that turns out not great. You got this, the height of the Iraq War. The Ultimate Warrior drops the belt. Slaughter goes on to WrestleMania, and then you got the Royal Rumble itself, which Hogan wins again. You probably argue the toss on that one. Did Hogan need to win that one? Probably not, because it's evidently that the Ultimate Warrior has been beaten and Sergeant Slaughter is now the evil Iraqi guy, and therefore you must send the All-American Hulk Hogan after him. If you're going to do that, you don't need Hogan to win the Royal Rumble. Let somebody else win it. But no, they didn't. They decided not to do that, which is a very, very strange decision. But yeah, fast forward to 1992, and then the Royal Rumble itself becomes the match for the vacant WWF Heavyweight Championship. You've got all the big names in there. Ric Flair, again, not wishing to quote Ric Flair as the be-all and end-all of this, but he said he felt that match was just like one of the very, very few times where everybody who came down was a star. And you got so many people in that match who were champions or had held championships previously, not just in the WWF but elsewhere. You know, look at people like Kerry Von Erich, who was former NWA champion, Flair himself, NWA champion. Just crammed full of people who were bona fide stars. And of course, Flair comes in at number 3, goes all the way through to win it. It's one of those talked about matches in wrestling history. And then 1993, you actually come across the very first time that the winner of the Royal Rumble goes to WrestleMania. And that was the first time that was done. That's been going, 32 years now? So that was the thing, that you win the Royal Rumble, you get the title shot at whoever's at WrestleMania, and then that's exactly what we've seen a couple of weeks ago, and that's exactly what happened here. And then gradually over time, so the 94 Rumble becomes the first time there are joint winners, when Lex Luger and Bret Hart go the rope at the same time. They can't be separated, to set up the situation at WrestleMania 10. Bret has to wrestle a match against Owen Hart. Lex Luger gets first shot at the champion, and then Bret Hart gets the shot at whoever wins that match at the end of the card. So interesting way of doing it. And that was also the night before Rumble where Diesel comes in and chucks everybody out, and then somebody comes in, he chucks them out straight away. Never seen that before. They didn't have anybody do that. It was weird. And I think over the time I've got less and less invested in the Royal Rumble. I think '95 they tried to change everything by making it everybody comes to the ring, is it every minute and a half or a minute or something like that. And that '95 one, you could really see just how much the quality had dropped off dramatically of who was a star, who was a big name. And you're in this mix of the start in this, war between WCW and WWF, trying to trade people, move them around, especially in '96, and you start getting people turn up like Dory Funk Jr. and what's his name, Dick Slater, and you think, who are these people, coming in and wrestling here? I mean, it used to be exciting to see these names. I mean, 93 Royal Rumble, Carlos Colon comes out, who Gorilla Monsoon describes as a youngster, even though he was wrestling when Gorilla was still wrestling. And he comes out, and I've never seen Carlos Colon wrestle before. I heard about the WWC in Puerto Rico, I'd heard all about it, but I'd never seen him wrestle before, and he was just this old guy coming down in the singlet. It was like that. Not particularly exciting. Then we got the sort of shenanigans towards the end of the 90s where Vince McMahon would get involved, and the one year he wins the Royal Rumble, and that's the idea. He and Steve Austin started it off and then disappeared for most of the Royal Rumble and come back at the end. And again, those are probably full of a load of mid-carders, but because of the popularity of the thing at the time, that was it. And really, since sort of 2002, I haven't watched the Royal Rumble since then. I've tried to dip into some of them since then, but I think the last one I watched was in 2015, when we were going to, because a friend of mine booked me tickets to go and watch a live event after WrestleMania at the NIA, I think it was Birmingham NIA. So I said to Claire, well, the only thing we have to do, we have to watch, I'm going to start watching from January till WrestleMania so I can follow everything that happens, so we know when we go to the live event, we know where we are with the storylines and things. And it was a real slog to get through that, I must be honest with you. And that was 2015. That was the last men's one I watched all the way through. I haven't seen a women's Royal Rumble all the way through until I just watched the one a couple of weeks ago. Is it my favourite event? No. I don't particularly like it. I mean, I like a good Battle Royal. Battle Royal was my first introduction to wrestling. Again, go back and watch that first video. Link below. Was it done better back then? No, I still think as a concept, it's all right, but I think they were much better at it years ago when they're trying to kill for time than they are now, or perhaps the women aren't as good at doing that as perhaps the men were back then. Like I said 20 minutes ago, these guys, don't forget people back then used to wrestle 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes. So they were very good at making a match last. Look, as if you go into a rest hold, or you're backed up into a corner, or what have you. You're very good at or somebody's lying on the mat and you're just pretending to, sort of put pressure on their chest. I mean, you can do that for 30 seconds or whatever. Move on to somebody else, do exactly the same again. And it looks as if you're doing something where it's just lying flat, prone on the mat. It just looks as if you're having a bit of a kip. Anyway. But yeah, so. Yeah, I did enjoy the Women's Rumble. It's not going to convert me to going back and watching the rest of the event. Nothing against women's wrestling in general. I do enjoy it. But yeah, that wasn't for me. Am I going to dip into any more current events coming up? Possibly. I think probably as we get towards WrestleMania, if there is anything that interests me in the meantime, I will do so. Otherwise, I may drop a video in the meantime. Certainly, I want to, as we get towards WrestleMania, I'd like to talk about some of the previous WrestleManias I've watched and things like that. My first WrestleMania was 6, but I think by that point, not long after that, I managed to work my way through some of the older ones as well. And watched a lot of WrestleManias over the years and some really good matches and stuff like that. So I'd like to give you my thoughts on that as well as we go forward. And anything else wrestling related that comes up, I'll drop a video in as it goes. I hope you've enjoyed that anyway. And hopefully some of those early memories from sort of 88 to sort of 95 sparked a few memories for you. Got any memories yourself, please do let me know. Let me know your thoughts on the Women's Rumble as well. Do I need to start dipping into other aspects of this event? Do I need to start following things through now? I don't know. Please let me know. I'm always interested. Point me in the right direction. It'll be good to hear from you. In the meantime, I'll leave that with you. I will speak to you again about something else, related to something else, in the very near future. But until then, do take care. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.